So this is the assignment walkthrough for the assignment titled Assignment Number 1 Video Introduction. Very simple assignment. This is just a little bit of a meet and greet. What I like to do is I like to take these video submissions and then put them into a discussion board so that you can get to know all of your colleagues. Okay, so this, all it asks for is to post a brief 45 to 60-second video of yourself. You can do that any way you'd like. You can do with your phone. You could even do actually a media recording right inside of Canvas. We can record on Canva, however you'd like to do it. Phone might just be the easiest, and then I think you should be able to just upload right from your phone into the Canvas app. Okay. Of course, if you have any questions or concerns, reach out to me. Better to try the assignment earlier so that you can get it in before Sunday. And the other important thing is this, is that this is our only assignment currently in our engagement weight group. And so it is worth currently 10% of the grade. So this is strategic. This is so that if you get this submitted on time at the very beginning, it puts you in a very good standing for the rest of the course. Okay. So what does it ask for? Current profession, academic history, personal hobbies, and an entrepreneurial story. So I'll do a quick example. Hi, my name is Justin Shepke. My current profession is that I am the Entrepreneurship Programs Manager and Adjunct Professor within the School of Entrepreneurship at Florida Gulf Coast University. My academic history is that I did my undergrad at Bradley University in Illinois, and then I did my Master's of Science in Entrepreneurship at Florida Gulf Coast University. Personal hobbies, interests. Funny enough, my undergraduate degree is actually in music. So for years and years, I taught piano and taught guitar and worked in businesses in the music field. An entrepreneurial story, twofold. One of my first partners was actually a professor of mine when I was an undergrad. And imagine this: you are a guitar teacher. He was a guitar teacher. And imagine that you get really, really good at getting students. So much so that you don't have enough hours to teach. Say you have 100 students and you're gonna do hour-long lessons, that's 100 hours a week, not feasible. So what does he do? He gets really good at getting students on one hand, and then on the other hand, a talent bench of teachers. So connecting students with teachers. This is a really great way of scaling up a venture like that, a music venture like that. Another really great example, and this is the example I like to use with the Runway program, and that is we might be familiar with Richard Branson. Richard Branson is the founder of Virgin Atlantic and Virgin Galactic. So Virgin Atlantic was a transatlantic airline service. The minimum requirement to launch a transatlantic airline service would be a 747. You would think it would be a 747. In other words, that is what is required to be able to cross the Atlantic. Okay, so that 747 costs a couple $100 million. You might assume that, okay, you might need a couple $100 million in order to start a transatlantic airline service. What does he do? He calls Boeing. He goes, hey, is there any chance that you might have an old 747 lying around that's not being used? They hang up on him, right? As you would imagine. Calls back, persistence. Eventually, he's on the phone with someone who is basically well positioned to be able to just kind of dispose of him, get him to stop calling. And he goes, okay, so ask the same question. Is there a chance that you have a 747 that's lying around that is not being used that could otherwise be generating revenue for you? And they go, well, we don't really have to have this conversation, but here's how it works. There is one customer in each country. Richard Branson was in the UK. And they tell him, okay, well, British Airways is the customer in the UK, so you're not going to be anytime soon replacing British Airways. And he goes, okay, well, I get that, and I respect that. If British Airways were to call you, and I appreciate you like kind of humoring me here, but if British Airways called you and asked, hey, is there an old 747 lying around that we would like to lease? What would you lease it to them a month? They come back, they tell him, well, probably around like $200,000 for like 1 month. And he goes, done. Again, he had $0 in startup capital. So how is it that he was able to say done and actually make this happen? Is because he knew he had all these friends and family and networks of people that he knew traveled from the UK to the US and back and did this regularly. So it was all the real people, right? So he knew all these real people would buy tickets if he was able to sell tickets. So the plane flew in April. He started selling tickets in January. By April, he had paid for the cost of the lease and the cost of the fuel and the cost of the pilots before the plane ever took off, right? That's how they got British. That's how they got Virgin Atlantic off the ground. Three big takeaways. First takeaway is this: is that the number one reason a startup fails is not enough customers. So what he had is this long list of potential customers, right, which made it all possible. The second thing is this: is she replaced startup capital with creative thinking. So often it's the idea of lean launch, bootstrapping, but you don't need millions and billions of dollars in order to be able to start even like a transatlantic airline service. The idea here being is that even if you had all those funds to start with, you wouldn't want to risk them on assumptions. Right? So therefore, it is much better to adopt a scientific approach, and where you're really leveraging real people who are paying customers. Okay. The third thing is this: is that if you can start a transatlantic airline service with $0 in startup capital, you can probably start any business with $0 in startup capital. The next one is, and then lastly is that today Virgin Atlantic now is also Virgin Galactic, and they're selling $250,000 tickets to low Earth orbit. Which is pretty exciting, based on the same principle that, okay, if we sell tickets, there's going to be people who are interested in this, and they will start buying the tickets. And the worst thing possible is that we have to issue refunds. But that hasn't been the case, and I think they actually are sending people to space right now. Certainly the other companies are, but pretty exciting. I love that story. It's kind of a long one, and again, I promise to keep these videos short. But again, that is the idea for this assignment. So reach out if you have any questions. I am here to help. Okay, best. Bye.